My Jeff said she was leaving for someone better while I was paying for her MBA. So I exposed the lie her perfect new world was built on. They say revenge is a dish best served cold, but I'm getting ahead of myself. My name is Ethan. I evaluate risk and potential for a living. As a partner at Nexus Ventures in San Francisco, I spend my days filtering through hundreds of startups, looking for that rare combination of brilliant technology and capable execution. My specialty is deep tech, the unsexy, complicated infrastructure that powers everything else. I don't chase trends. I invest in foundations. And Chloe? She was the one investment I made with my heart instead of my head. We met at a tech mixer 3 years ago. While everyone else was pitching me their revolutionary apps, she was asking questions about computing architecture that most MBAs wouldn't understand. Chloe worked in business development at Core Connect, a promising data optimization startup. She wasn't just beautiful, though she was, with her auburn hair and keen green eyes. She was brilliant. When she spoke about technology markets, her whole face lit up with genuine enthusiasm. "So you're the guy everyone's trying to impress tonight," she said, sliding into the seat next to me at the bar after I'd escaped the 20th pitch of the evening. I looked up from my scotch, expecting another elevator pitch. Instead, I found myself staring into the most intelligent eyes I'd ever seen. "Guilty as charged," I admitted, "though I think I've hit my pitch quota for the night." She laughed, a sound that somehow cut through the ambient noise of the crowded venue. "Don't worry, I'm not here to pitch you anything. At least not a startup." "Thank God for small mercies," I said, signaling the bartender. "What are you drinking?" "Old-fashioned, and I'm Chloe Williams." "Ethan Wright. Nice to meet someone who isn't trying to convince me their app is the next Facebook." She rolled her eyes. "Please." As if the world needs another social media platform. The real innovation is happening in infrastructure and data architecture. The stuff nobody wants to talk about at parties. I nearly choked on my drink. You might be the first person I've met at one of these mixers who actually gets that. That night turned into breakfast at a 24-hour diner, where we talked until the sun came up about everything from quantum computing to our shared love of obscure sci-fi novels. By the time we parted ways, I knew I had met someone extraordinary. Our second date was a hackathon, her suggestion. While other couples were doing dinner and movies, we were huddled over laptops, building a ridiculous app that translated cat meows into English. We didn't win, but we laughed more in those 48 sleep-deprived hours than I had in years. "You know what I like about you, Ethan," she said as we stumbled back to my apartment, exhausted and giddy. "You understand the beauty in the building blocks. You see the poetry in the infrastructure." It was the best compliment I'd ever received. Our connection was immediate. Within 6 months, we moved into a minimalist penthouse overlooking the bay. We were the power couple my friends envied, the venture capitalist and the rising business development star. We talked about startups over breakfast and debated valuation models over dinner. I thought we were building something real. "Ethan, I need to talk to you about something important," Chloe said one evening, curled up next to me on our balcony. The city lights sparkled below us like earthbound stars. "Shoot," I said, setting down my bourbon. "I want to get my MBA at Stanford." I nodded. It made sense for her career trajectory. "It's not just about the degree," she continued. "It's about the network, the pedigree. I have big ideas, Ethan. I want to build something of my own someday. Something that matters." "I think that's fantastic," I said, meaning it. I'd always admired her ambition. She hesitated, then came to the point. "It's expensive, really expensive. Nearly $200,000 with living expenses." I didn't even blink. "I'll cover it." Her eyes widened. "Just like that? No questions asked?" I pulled her closer. "Chloe, I invest in potential for a living, and you have more potential than most startups in my portfolio. Consider this my personal investment in your future. Our future." That night, she showed her gratitude in ways that made me forget it all about the money. As we lay tangled in sheets afterwards, she whispered, "I'm going to make you proud, Ethan. Just wait and see. We're going to build an empire together." I believed her, completely. The next weekend, over dinner at Aquarello, our favorite restaurant, I handed her a check for the full amount. She insisted on creating what she called an investment agreement on a napkin. She wrote, "I, Chloe Williams, hereby promise to return this investment with infinite returns in the form of our shared future." We signed it with flourish and had the waiter take our picture with the napkin. "To us," she said, raising her champagne glass, "the best partnership in Silicon Valley." "To us," I echoed. I still have that picture. The first semester of her MBA program went perfectly. She called me every night, bubbling with excitement about her classes, her professors, the connections she was making. We'd spend weekends together, her studying while I reviewed pitch decks, occasionally breaking to debate the finer points of venture economics or technological innovation. But during the second semester, something shifted. Her calls became shorter, less frequent. Our weekend discussions shifted from our future to my courses and my career path. I told myself this was normal. She was finding her own way, developing her independent vision. That's what I was investing in, after all. Then came the weekend trips with her study group that I wasn't invited to join, the missed dinners, the calls that went to voicemail when she was supposedly in class. One night, after she canceled our dinner plans for the third time that month, I drove to Stanford unannounced. I told myself I was just bringing her favorite takeout as a surprise, but deep down, I knew I was checking up on her. I found her in one of the common areas, surrounded by classmates, laughing in a way I hadn't seen in months. There was a tall, charismatic guy sitting closer to her than necessary, his hand occasionally brushing hers as they looked at something on her laptop. When she saw me, her smile faltered for just a fraction of a second before she jumped up. "Ethan, what are you doing here?" Her tone was bright, but there was something off about it. "Thought I'd surprise you with dinner," I said, holding up the bag from her favorite Thai place. "That's so sweet," she said, gathering her things quickly. "Guys, this is my boyfriend, Ethan. Ethan, this is my study group." The tall guy stood up, extending his hand. "Julian Reeves, heard a lot about you." His grip was firm, his smile perfect, too perfect, like something practiced in front of a mirror. "Funny," I replied. "I haven't heard anything about you." An awkward laugh rippled through the group. Chloe shot me a look. "Julian just joined our cohort," she explained. "He sold his last startup and decided to get his MBA before launching his next venture." "Aura, right?" I asked, recognizing the name. "Impressive exit." "Thanks," Julian said with a modest shrug that didn't reach his eyes. "Just in the right place at the right time." "And modest too, I just saw him," I said, not bothering to hide my sarcasm. "A rare quality in the valley." Julian's smile tightened. "Chloe's been a tremendous help in catching me up on the quantitative material. She has a brilliant mind for systems architecture." "I know," I said evenly. "That's why I invested in her education." Chloe quickly said her goodbyes and practically dragged me away. "What was that about?" she demanded once we were outside. "What was what about?" "That alpha male territorial thing with Julian." I raised an eyebrow. "Is that what that was? I thought I was just meeting your study group." "You embarrassed me in front of my classmates. I brought you dinner. After showing up unannounced to check up on me." "Is that how you see it?" She sighed, running a hand through her hair. "Let's just go home. I'm tired." We ate in near silence that night. When I asked about her classes, her answers were clipped, perfunctory. When I tried to tell her about a new quantum computing startup I was evaluating, she checked her phone 3 times before I finished. "Sorry," she said, not looking up from her screen. "Group project deadline tomorrow." "With Julian?" I asked, trying to keep my tone neutral. Her eyes flashed. "Yes, with Julian. And 4 other people. It's a study group, Ethan, not a dating service." "Never said it was." "You didn't have to. It was written all over your face." She stood up, taking her plate to the kitchen. "I'm going to bed. I have an early class." That was the first night in our relationship that we went to bed angry. It wouldn't be the last. The changes were subtle at first, then increasingly obvious. Weekend trips with her study group that I wasn't invited to join. Calls that went to voicemail when she was supposedly in class. The gradual disappearance of "we" from her vocabulary, replaced by "I" and my career and my goals. One particularly telling incident occurred at a Stanford networking event I attended as her +1. While I was getting drinks, I overheard Julian talking to another student. Just a matter of time, he was saying. She's wasted on that VC robot. She needs someone who can match her creativity, her vision. But isn't he funding her MBA? The other student asked. Julian laughed. Consider it his parting gift to the tech world. He's investing in the woman who's going to help me build the next unicorn. I almost confronted him then and there, but something cold and calculating in me decided to wait, to watch, to gather data as I would for any investment decision. That night, I came home to find Chloe on a video call laughing. As soon as she saw me, she ended the call abruptly. Who was that? I asked. Just Julian. We're working on a case study. At 11 at night, she bristled. Are you checking up on me now? Should I be? She slammed her laptop shut. I can't do this right now, Ethan. I have a finance exam tomorrow. We need to talk about what's happening here, I persisted. Mumming is happening, except you being paranoid and me trying to get through Stanford. You're different, Chloe. We're different. Of course I'm different, she exclaimed. I'm growing, evolving, meeting new people, exploring new ideas. That's the whole point of this experience. And where do I fit in this evolution? She looked at me, her expression softening slightly. You're my rock, Ethan, my foundation. I couldn't do any of this without you. She approached me, wrapping her arms around my waist. I'm sorry I've been distant. It's just been so intense. That night, we made love like we were trying to find our way back to each other. But even as she fell asleep in my arms, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was losing her. 2 weeks later, I got a text from a number I didn't recognize. You should know what your girlfriend is really doing at Stanford. Check her Instagram tags. I almost deleted it as spam, but curiosity got the better of me. Chloe rarely posted on social media, and when she did, it was carefully curated. Professional achievements, occasional scenic views, nothing personal. But when I checked the photos she was tagged in, I found a series of posts from other Stanford GSB students. Weekend trips to Napa, parties at Lake Tahoe. In nearly every photo, she was next to Julian Reeves. In one particularly eclectic image, they were sitting close together at a bonfire, his arm around her shoulders, her head tilted toward him, both laughing as if sharing a private joke. The caption read, GSB, power couple in the making, # watch this space. My stomach twisted into knots. I closed the app, trying to process what I was seeing. Was I being paranoid, or was this evidence of exactly what I feared? The next morning, I found a receipt in her jacket pocket for a weekend at the Post Ranch Inn in Big Sur, one of the most exclusive and romantic getaways on the California coast. The dates coincided with a women in business conference she had told me she was attending in San Diego. I decided to confront her, but calmly, rationally. I needed to hear her explanation before jumping to conclusions. But the conversation never happened, because 2 days later, everything fell apart. It was a Tuesday evening. I remember because I had just closed a Series A round for a quantum computing startup and was in a great mood. I came home with a bottle of Krug and found Chloe sitting at our dining table, posture perfect, hands folded like a business negotiation. She was wearing the dress I had given her for our anniversary, a dark blue Valentino that made her eyes look like the ocean at dusk. I would later wonder if this was intentional cruelty or just coincidence. We need to talk, she said, her voice crisp and professional. I set down the champagne, suddenly aware of the silence in our apartment. No music playing, no warm greeting, just those 4 dreaded words hanging in the air between us. What's going on? I asked, still standing. I've met someone else. No preamble, no softening the blow. I felt a cold wave wash through me, starting at my scalp and running down to my toes. Someone else? His name is Julian Reeves, she said, watching my face for recognition. Of course I knew who Julian Reeves was. Everyone in Silicon Valley knew Julian. Serial entrepreneur, media darling, charismatic visionary who had reportedly sold his last company, Aura, for 9 figures. His face was on tech magazines. He gave TED Talks. He had a cult-like following of aspiring founders. Julian and I connected at a GSB entrepreneurship event, she continued. It was unexpected. But Ethan, he's different from anyone I've ever met. He's a creator, a visionary. He builds things that change the world. I stood there, still processing, as she delivered what she clearly thought was her coup de grace. You're brilliant, Ethan, but you're an assessor. You sit behind a desk and decide if other people's dreams are worthy of your money. Julian puts everything on the line for his vision. He doesn't just evaluate risk, he takes it. The words struck like precision-guided missiles, targeting exactly where I was most vulnerable. I had always been proud of my role in the ecosystem. I helped brilliant ideas find the resources they needed to grow. But Chloe had just reframed my entire career as some kind of parasitic spectator sport. I'm leaving, she said finally. Julian is launching something new, something revolutionary, and he wants me by his side, not just as his partner, but as his co-founder. I found my voice. And Stanford? The MBA I'm paying for? She had the decency to look slightly uncomfortable, but recovered quickly. I'll finish the program, of course. It's an investment in my future. Our future, I corrected. That was the deal. She shrugged, a small, dismissive gesture that somehow hurt more than her words. I'm updating my life strategy, Ethan. As an investor, you should understand the importance of portfolio adjustments when new information becomes available. And there it was, our relationship, 3 years of sharing dreams, building a home, planning a future, reduced to an underperforming asset in her portfolio. I didn't yell. I didn't plead. Those reactions might have given her the drama she seemed to expect. Instead, I nodded slowly and said, I understand completely. Her expression flickered with surprise, maybe even disappointment. She had prepared for resistance, not acceptance. That's it? She asked. What did you expect, Chloe? That I'd fight for someone who clearly doesn't want to be fought for? I just thought, she trailed off, suddenly uncertain, that I'd beg, make a scene, sorry to disappoint. Ethan, this isn't easy for me either. We had good times. Had, past tense, got it. She gathered her purse, already packed suitcase waiting by the door. I'll get the rest of my things later this week. Don't forget to update your address with Stanford's billing department, I said evenly. She paused at the door. What? The next tuition installment is due next week. $50,000. I assume Julian will be covering that now? Her face hardened. That's petty, Ethan. You promised to pay for my MBA. I invested in our future, I corrected, which you've just informed me no longer exists. As an investor, you should understand the importance of cutting losses when new information becomes available. You can't do that, she said, her voice rising. I've built my entire plan around this degree. And I built my entire plan around us. Plans change. I'll sue you, she threatened. I have the check, the napkin with your signature. I couldn't help but laugh, a short, hollow sound. Go ahead. Let's get a judge's opinion on whether infinite returns in the form of our shared future constitutes a legally binding contract. Her face flushed with anger. You're not who I thought you were. Funny, I was just thinking the same thing about you. She left without another word, slamming the door hard enough to rattle the windows. I stood alone in my apartment, champagne still unpopped on the counter. I should have felt devastated. Instead, I felt a strange clarity. The venture capitalist in me took over. When a deal goes bad, you don't wallow, you mitigate damage and move forward. That night, I sat on the balcony until dawn, nursing a bottle of bourbon and watching the city lights blur through unshed tears. By morning, I had a plan. First thing, I called Stanford's financial aid office. Calm, professional, I explained that I would no longer be providing financial support for Chloe Williams' MBA program. The administrator was sympathetic but clear. Chloe would need to secure alternative funding within 30 days or risk disenrollment. Next, I contacted my attorney. Within hours, he had drafted a letter outlining Chloe's financial obligations regarding our shared living arrangements and expenses. Nothing vindictive, just business. I also called our building management. Chloe Williams is no longer a resident, I informed them. Please update the security protocols accordingly. Should we have her escorted if she attempts to enter? The security manager asked. I considered it. No, but she'll need to be announced and approved by me before accessing the building. Chloe called that evening, furious. I let it go to voicemail. She called again and again. Finally, I picked up on the fourth call. What the hell, Ethan? She hissed, not bothering with pleasantries. I just got a call from Stanford saying my funding has been pulled. And now your lawyer is sending me bills? Hello to you too, Chloe. Is this your idea of revenge? It's pathetic. I kept my voice level. It's not revenge, it's business. You terminated our agreement. It was a gift, she shouted. You can't just take it back because you're hurt. It was an investment, I corrected her. With clearly stated terms on that napkin you insisted we sign. The terms have been violated, so the funding is withdrawn. Simple contract law. You're being ridiculous. That napkin was a joke. I'm not laughing. And what about my things? Security wouldn't let me in the building. You can schedule a time to collect your belongings. I'll have them ready in the lobby. You cold-blooded bastard, she spat. How can you just switch off like this? I learned from the best, I replied. Wasn't it you who said I should understand portfolio adjustments? Julian was right about you, she said, her voice dripping with contempt. You really are just a calculator with legs. No wonder I never truly loved you. That one stung, but I didn't let it show in my voice. Goodbye, Chloe. I wish you and Julian all the success you deserve. I hung up before she could respond and blocked her number. The next morning, I was surprised by a visitor at my office. Julian Reeves himself, looking every bit the Silicon Valley wonderkind in his designer jeans and cashmere hoodie. Ethan, he said, flashing his perfect smile as my assistant showed him in. Thanks for making time. I didn't, I replied coolly. But since you are here, what can I do for you? He settled into the chair across from my desk without being invited. Look, I know things are awkward, but I think we can be adults about this. About what exactly? About Chloe, about Stanford, about the funding situation. I leaned back in my chair. There is no situation. Chloe made a choice. Choices have consequences. She's brilliant. You know that, Julian said, leaning forward. She deserves to finish her MBA. I agree, and I'm sure with your recent exit, covering her tuition won't be a problem for you. A flicker of something, annoyance, concern, crossed his face before his smile returned. Here's the thing, Ethan. Most of my liquidity is tied up in my new venture. It's going to be huge, revolutionary, really, but the capital is deployed. Sounds like a cash flow problem, not my problem. It could be your opportunity, he countered. I'm raising a Series A, $50 million. I'd be willing to give Nexus Ventures a first look. Preferred terms. In return, you continue Chloe's funding as originally planned. I stared at him, incredulous. Let me get this straight. You want me to pay for my ex-girlfriend's education while she's with you in exchange for the privilege of investing in your company? When you put it like that, it sounds exactly like what it is, I cut him off. A terrible deal. For me. Julian's charm slipped, revealing something harder underneath. Don't be petty, Ethan. This isn't personal. It's entirely personal, and now this meeting is over. I stood up. He remained seated. You're making a mistake. Elysium is going to be the biggest thing to hit predictive analytics since machine learning. You're letting emotions cloud your judgment. No, Julian, I'm exercising sound judgment by not doing business with someone who has demonstrated questionable ethics in both his personal and professional life. His eyes narrowed. What's that supposed to mean? It means get out of my office before I have security escort you out. He stood slowly, his friendly facade completely gone. You'll regret this. When Elysium is valued at $1 billion, remember this moment. I'm sure I will, I replied, unmoved. But probably not for the reasons you think. As he reached the door, he turned back. You know, she never really talked about you, even when we first started seeing each other. I think she had checked out of your relationship long before she met me. The jab was calculated to hurt, but I didn't give him the satisfaction of a reaction. Goodbye, Julian. After he left, I sat at my desk, mind racing. Julian Reeves, the celebrated entrepreneur, had just revealed something important. He was desperate for cash, which made me wonder just how successful was that Aura exit really. That afternoon, I made a call to Ben Sharma, a former engineering classmate who now ran a prominent tech blog. Ben, it's Ethan. I need a favor. Off the record. Shoot. What's the real story with Julian Reeves and Aura? Ben laughed. Why? Thinking of investing in Elysium? Just doing my homework. Well, between us, the nine-figure exit was creative accounting at its finest. The actual deal was closer to 8 million, with most of that going to pay off creditors. But Julian's excellent at spinning narratives. And the technology, was it really groundbreaking? Fancy UI over mediocre backend, classic Silicon Valley smoke and mirrors. Why the interest? Just connecting some dots. Thanks, Ben. I owe you one. For the next few weeks, I threw myself into work with manic intensity. 14-hour days, weekends at the office. My partners noticed but didn't comment, probably assuming I was working through heartbreak. They weren't entirely wrong. Then 2 months after Chloe walked out of my life, fate delivered the kind of coincidence that would seem too convenient in a movie script. Our Monday investment committee meeting started like any other. 6 partners around a table, reviewing potential deals. Mark, our managing partner, saved the most exciting prospect for last. I've been talking with Julian Reeves, he announced, sliding glossy pitch decks across the table. His new venture, Elysium, is looking for a lead investor on their Series A, 50 million. I froze, staring at the sleek logo on the cover. Elysium, Greek mythology, the paradise reserved for heroes and those blessed by the gods. How fitting for Julian's ego. Julian's track record speaks for itself, Mark continued. Aura was a home run. This new platform uses AI for predictive market analysis, revolutionary stuff. My partners were already nodding, flipping through the deck with obvious interest. Julian Reeves's name was enough to get most VCs salivating. Ethan, this is right up your alley, Dragueto, Mark said. I want you to lead the due diligence. Deep dive on the tech, team assessment, the work. So the universe has a twisted sense of humor. They were asking me to evaluate my ex-girlfriend's new boyfriend's company, the very relationship that had destroyed mine. I could have recused myself. Should have, probably. But a cold, calculating part of me saw an opportunity. Not for revenge, I told myself, but for closure. Happy to take point on this, I said, keeping my voice neutral. No one at the firm knew about Chloe and Julian. I had kept that humiliation private. For the next 3 weeks, I became a man possessed. Due diligence is always thorough, but what I did for Elysium went beyond professional thoroughness. It was obsession. I dissected their code architecture line by line. I interviewed former employees from Julian's previous ventures. I cross-referenced their market analysis against raw data. I scrutinized every patent application, every academic paper their technology referenced. One particular breakthrough came during a late-night review of their technical documentation. I noticed a distinctive approach to data optimization that seemed oddly familiar. On a hunch, I pulled up some public documentation from Core Connect, Chloe's former employer. The similarity wasn't just striking, it was unmistakable. The next day, I tracked down Lisa Chen, Core Connect's lead architect, under the pretense of evaluating a potential investment. Their approach to multi-dimensional data clustering is quite innovative, I commented over coffee. Lisa nodded. It should be. We spent 3 years developing it. Have you patented the methodology? Some components, others are trade secrets. She paused, studying me. Why the interest? I chose my words carefully. I've come across something that bears a striking resemblance. Might be worth your legal team taking a look. Her expression darkened. Would this have anything to do with the code that went missing last year? Missing code, she lowered her voice. Someone accessed our repository and downloaded key architectural components. We couldn't prove who did it, but it happened right before one of our business development managers left for Stanford. Chloe Williams, I said, not a question. Lisa's eyes widened. You know her? We've met. I handed her my card. If you decide to investigate further, I'd be interested in the findings. One night around 2 a.m., as I was poring over Elysium's technical documentation, another piece of the puzzle fell into place. Their market analysis contained proprietary data that looked suspiciously like it had come from Core Connect's internal benchmarks. I called an old engineering school friend who now worked at a prominent tech publication. James, I need information on Aura's acquisition. Off the record. Ethan, you know I can't. I'm not asking for anything confidential. Just the real numbers, not the PR spin. A pause. There are rumors the reported figure was significantly inflated. Why? Professional curiosity. What about Julian Reeves? What's his reputation like among engineers who've worked with him? James laughed. Let's just say there's a big gap between his public image and what his former employees say. The guy's a master marketer, but a nightmare to work for. Technical decisions are made for PR value, not engineering soundness. Why the interest? Considering an investment. Thanks, James, I owe you one. Next, I tracked down a former Core Connect engineer. We met at a coffee shop in Palo Alto, away from the usual tech hangouts. Thanks for meeting me, I said, sliding into the booth. He nodded, looking nervous. You said this was about Core Connect's architecture? Among other things. I pushed a coffee toward him. Did you work with Chloe Williams? His expression changed. Yeah, business development. Smart woman. Why? When did she leave the company? About a year ago. Look, what's this about? I showed him my Nexus Ventures card. I'm evaluating a company that has some architectural similarities to Core Connect systems. Just trying to understand if it's convergent evolution or something else. He leaned forward, lowering his voice. You mean Elysium? Julian Reeves's new thing? I kept my face neutral. You've heard of it? Everyone in our engineering department has. Their technical architecture is practically identical to our proprietary systems. We could never prove it, but shortly before Chloe left, a significant chunk of our code base disappeared from the repository. Nothing critical enough to cripple operations, but enough proprietary architecture to give a competitor a 6-month head start. You suspect Chloe took it? He shrugged. Can't prove anything, but the timing was suspicious, and now she's with Reeves, building essentially the same system with a fancier interface. He paused. Is that what this is about? Are you investing in Elysium? Just doing my due diligence, I replied. The picture was becoming clear, and it was uglier than I had imagined. Chloe hadn't just left me for Julian. She had brought him stolen intellectual property as a dowry. Julian, the celebrated visionary, was building his new empire on pilfered code and fraudulent claims. I compiled my findings meticulously, building an airtight case. This wasn't about Chloe anymore. This was about professional integrity. About protecting my firm from a bad investment. At least, that's what I told myself. The final presentation was scheduled for a Thursday afternoon. Our entire investment committee would be there, along with Julian and his key team members. I knew Chloe would be among them. The morning of the presentation, I received a text from Chloe. Heard you're leading the due diligence on Elysium. Please, Ethan, this is my chance to build something real. Don't let what happened between us cloud your judgment. I didn't respond. I arrived early to set up, arranging my laptop and materials with military precision. My partners filtered in, followed by Julian's team. And then there they were. Julian Reeves, tall and tanned, with his trademark confident smile, and beside him, Chloe, looking polished in a designer suit I'd never seen before. Her eyes met mine briefly, widening in surprise before narrowing with what looked like triumph. She thought I was there to rubber stamp their funding, to hand them $50 million so they could build their perfect new world on the ashes of my heart. Julian strode over, hand extended. Ethan Wright, Julian Reeves, heard great things about you from the team at Nexus. I shook his hand firmly. The pleasure's mine. I've been looking forward to this meeting. Chloe didn't approach. She took a seat on Julian's side of the table, studiedly focused on her tablet. Mark called the meeting to order. Julian delivered a charismatic pitch, all vision and disruption and market domination. His slides were beautiful, his delivery flawless. By the end, most people in the room were leaning forward, already mentally spending the returns on their investment. Thank you, Julian, Mark said when he finished. Now Ethan has led our due diligence process and will share his findings. All eyes turned to me, including Chloe's, which now held a hint of uncertainty. I stood and took a deep breath. Julian has presented an impressive vision, I began. Elysium promises to revolutionize predictive market analysis through proprietary AI systems. On paper, it's exactly the kind of ambitious platform Nexus looks to back. Julian nodded appreciatively. Chloe relaxed slightly. However, I continued, our due diligence process raised several significant concerns that I feel compelled to share. The atmosphere in the room shifted. I clicked to my first slide, a side-by-side comparison of Elysium's core architecture and Core Connect's proprietary systems. As you can see, there are striking similarities between Elysium's foundation and existing technology developed by Core Connect. Not just conceptual similarities, but structural ones that would be statistically impossible to develop independently. Julian's smile faltered. Many platforms in this space share common approaches. I held up a hand. I've highlighted specific, unique identifiers in the code. These aren't common approaches, Julian. These are proprietary signatures. I clicked to the next slide, financial data from Aura's acquisition. Regarding track record, Julian has publicly claimed Aura sold for 9 figures. Our investigation shows the actual sale price was $8.7 million, with nearly $7 million in outstanding debt. Not exactly the home run it's been portrayed as. The room was dead silent now. Julian's tan seemed to have faded several shades. Chloe was staring at the table. Finally, and I said, clicking to my last slide, there's the matter of team composition. Elysium's core architecture closely resembles work done at Core Connect during the exact period when team member Chloe Williams was employed there. Shortly before her departure, Core Connect reported unauthorized access to their repositories. I turned to face Julian directly. So my question is simple. Can you clarify for us exactly how Elysium developed technology so similar to Core Connect's proprietary systems? And what steps have you taken to ensure there are no intellectual property concerns that might expose investors to liability? The question hung in the air like a live grenade. I hadn't directly accused them of theft. I had simply laid out facts and asked a question that Julian couldn't possibly answer without either admitting guilt or committing perjury. Julian attempted recovery. These are serious allegations, not allegations, I corrected calmly. Observations and questions. I'm simply doing my fiduciary duty to protect Nexus from potential liability. He turned to Chloe, clearly expecting her to jump in with a technical explanation. She stared back at him, panic evident in her eyes. Our architecture was developed independently, Julian insisted, his charm evaporating under pressure. Any similarities are coincidental. The entire tech sector is moving in this direction. Is that your official position? I asked. Because Core Connect might disagree. Their legal team certainly would. Chloe finally spoke up, her voice thin. Julian, maybe we should discuss this privately before. There's nothing to discuss, he snapped. This is a fishing expedition by a jealous ex-boyfriend. The room went completely still. My partners exchanged glances. Excuse me? Mark said. Julian realized his mistake too late. I just meant, what Mr. Reeves means, I interjected smoothly, is that Chloe and I previously had a personal relationship, which for full disclosure I should have mentioned before taking on this due diligence assignment. I turned to my partners. My apologies for the oversight. Mark cleared his throat. I think we've heard enough for today. Julian, thank you for your time. We'll be in touch. In venture capital parlance, "will be in touch" translates to absolutely not. Julian and his team gathered their materials in uncomfortable silence. Chloe still wouldn't look at me. As they filed out, I caught a fragment of Julian's heated whisper to her. You said he wouldn't be a problem. The door closed behind them. My partner sat in stunned silence for a moment. Jesus, Ethan, Mark finally said. That was thorough. Just doing my job, I replied, closing my laptop. Protecting our investments. Those similarities, said Rachel, our technical partner. They're beyond coincidental, aren't they? Draw your own conclusions, I said, but I wouldn't touch Elysium with a 10-foot pole. No one mentioned the obvious personal connection. No one had to. As I packed up my materials, Mark approached me with fury. Dinner tonight, just you and me. There are some things we should discuss. I nodded, knowing this conversation was inevitable. That evening, over steaks at a discreet restaurant in the financial district, Mark got straight to the point. You know Chloe Williams personally, don't you? I took a sip of my scotch. No point in lying. Yes, we were together for 3 years. She left me for Julian 2 months ago. Mark absorbed this without visible reaction. I see, and you didn't think to recuse yourself from the due diligence? Would my findings have been any different if someone else had done the work? That's not the point, Ethan. It's exactly the point, I countered. Everything I presented today was factual, verifiable, and relevant to our investment decision. My personal history with Chloe didn't change the facts. Mark studied me for a long moment. The board is meeting next week to vote on new managing partners. Your name is on the shortlist. I blinked in surprise. I wasn't aware. But this situation complicates things. Some might see your actions today as personally motivated. And was our decision not to invest in Elysium the right one? I challenged. Unquestionably, Mark admitted. Then my personal motivations are irrelevant. I did my job. I protected Nexus from a bad investment and potential legal exposure. Mark nodded slowly. For what it's worth, I agree with you. But perception matters in our business. So does making the right call, I said, even when it's complicated. I learned the fallout through Silicon Valley's efficient gossip network. Core Connect initiated legal proceedings against Julian and Elysium for intellectual property theft. Other venture firms who had been circling the deal backed away immediately. Julian's carefully constructed reputation began to unravel as journalists, smelling blood, dug into his past claims and found them wanting. 3 weeks after the Elysium presentation, I received a text message from an unknown number. Can we talk, please? C. I ignored it. She tried again the next day and the next. Finally, curiosity got the better of me. I agreed to meet her at a coffee shop, neutral territory, public, no chance of drama. She looked different when she arrived. Thinner, tired, the designer clothes replaced by jeans and a simple blouse. The triumphant gleam in her eye was gone. Thank you for meeting me, she said, sliding into the chair across from me. What do you want, Chloe? She wrapped her hands around her coffee cup. I'm not with Julian anymore. Congratulations. He wasn't who I thought he was, she continued, ignoring my sarcasm. After the Nexus meeting, everything fell apart. He blamed me for not warning him about you, said I'd sabotaged the deal. Did you steal code from Core Connect? I asked bluntly. She looked away. Julian asked for access to review some architecture examples. I thought it was to better understand what I was working on. I didn't realize he was... She trailed off. Copying it? He said it was just inspiration, that all great innovations build on what came before. She laughed bitterly. I believed him. I believed everything he said. And now? Now Core Connect is suing both of us. I've been dropped from Stanford because I can't pay tuition. My career in tech is basically over. No one will touch me after this. I felt a complicated mix of emotions: vindication, pity, lingering anger. What do you want from me, Chloe? I don't know, she admitted. Maybe just to say I'm sorry, that you were right about him, about everything. And that's supposed to make me feel better? No, she said quietly. Nothing I can say will fix what I did. I wanted you to know that I understand now. What I threw away, who you really are. She reached across the table, tentatively touching my hand. You were never just an assessor, Ethan. You were the real thing, the real builder. Julian just talked about changing the world. You actually helped make it happen. I pulled my hand away. It's too late for that, Chloe. I know. She stood up, gathering her purse. For what it's worth, I really did love you. That wasn't a lie. I watched her walk away, feeling nothing but a dull ache where the sharp pain had once been. It wasn't satisfaction. It wasn't closure. It was just over. 6 months after the Elysium presentation, Mark called me into his office. The board has voted, he said without preamble. We're making you managing partner. I blinked in surprise. That's unexpected. Is it? You saved us from a $50 million mistake with Elysium. Your instincts were right when everyone else was blinded by star power. That's exactly what we need leading this firm. I accepted the promotion, threw myself into the new role, found satisfaction in building something meaningful. The tech world moved on. Julian Reeves disappeared from the scene after settling with Core Connect for an undisclosed sum. Chloe, I heard, moved back to Chicago to work at her father's accounting firm. And me? I kept doing what I'd always done, finding the real innovators, the authentic builders, the people creating solid foundations rather than flashy facades. The napkin with our investment agreement sits framed on my office wall now. Not as a reminder of Chloe, but as a reminder that due diligence applies to every aspect of life. That the most important investment decisions are the ones we make in people. Was it revenge? Maybe in part, but it was also the right thing to do. In my business, the best decisions aren't emotional. They're based on facts, analysis, and clear-eyed assessment of risk and reward. And sometimes doing your job well is the best revenge of all.